Hey, everybody. I know it's been a while since I've done a live stream. Well, I've been doing them quite sporadically lately. Actually, I just remembered something. Be patient with me, folks. Sorry about that. But I actually did forget to actually do the whole Rumble thing here. So right now I'm only on YouTube and X, but I'm going to fix that right now just to make sure everything's good to go. Got to have it happening on Rumble because I know I'm starting to get quite a few different views, quite a few new views and viewers over on Rumble. So I'm going to make sure that I've got it playing over there. So sorry about the interruption here. Like I say, I must be getting a little bit rusty from not doing the regular live streams, but I'm going to get back in them and just give me a couple months here for work to start slowing down a little bit, and then I'll be able to get back into the swing of things full time, so to speak. But in the interim, I'm still going to do my thing once in a while. It's got to happen, especially when crazy things are taking place out there. Got to keep on top of some of this craziness, right? Okay, here we go. It's going up as a podcast over on the old Rumble. Okay, just one sec here, folks. Hope everyone's having a good weekend, by the way. The East Coast here is starting to it's getting to cool down a little bit. Looks like next week's going to be a little bit cooler in the temps in around the 21 degree mark. Although I got to tell you, I personally, as a Canadian, I've actually been really thoroughly enjoying the warmer weather. I actually genuinely like the warm weather. It beats the hell out of freezing, right? I get plenty of that stuff in the wintertime. So it's a nice change. Actually, I won't even worry about the tags for now. Just try to get things going at least. Okay, when I'm going live right now. How's that? How's that right now? So we'll click on that. Who appears in the live stream? I do. That's who. Yes. Submit. Oh, actually, I wonder how this is going to work now that I'm actually live streaming already, because normally I have to add the key and the server URL into the live stream. Not sure how I could do that now. So maybe I kind of messed up by not doing this beforehand. All right. I may end up then having to upload this after the fact. Set up new stream. Go to rumble.com live. Okay, did all that. Did all that. Waiting for stream. Embed? No. Well, actually, let me just click open another Rumble tab and see if anything's happening right now. Skip to content. Is the system rigged against you? All right, we'll give that a shot. Maybe it is already. Well, just going to let the intro video end. It takes 30 seconds, and then I'll be able to tell if maybe, just maybe, I might actually be live streaming over on the Rumble. I sure as heck hope so, because like I say, it's starting to be one of the better platforms for these kinds of live streams. YouTube has long since left me in the dust. They allow me to play around on the platform, so to speak, in my own little sandbox, but that's about it. No, actually, it's just coming up with the placeholder video. So maybe I'm not going to be able to actually start the live streaming on Rumble at this particular time. I don't see where else I could do it. Leave studio? No, I don't want to leave studio. Do I? I can't go to destinations because that's what I normally have to do. All right, what the hell? So yeah, sorry it's not going to be live on Rumble today. My bad, but it is going to be right now live streaming on YouTube and X. Actually, let me just check on X and make sure it's happening over there. X, formerly known as Twitter. Go to my profile. And yeah, it's actually live streaming over on X. So you can check it out on X, folks. Whoa, whoa. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Check out the old live streams on X. Let me just let people know that I'm live, actually. I'm live. I'm live, bitches. Yeah. Yeah. I'm live and feeling good. Much better than some of the younger folks in our country, and for good reason. Well, I mean, things have definitely been skewed in favor of older generations, in particular the boomers, right? Now, some Gen Xers, I'll admit, some Gen Xers are benefiting, or at least the Gen Xers who are, a little bit further along on the old Ponzi scheme and entered into it, you know what I mean? Under the, or just behind or at the heels of the boomers. But I'm not one of them, folks. I can honestly say with absolute clarity that I am not one of the people who are taking advantage of the multiple Ponzi schemes or this current rig system that tremendously benefits the older generations, like I say, aka the boomers in particular, at the expense of almost everyone else. And the fact that there are a lot of boomers out there that seem to be willing to go along with this scheme, and I mean, surely they must know. I'm sure there's lots of Canadians who can claim ignorance, right? For sure, for sure. But there's got to be enough wise and astute people in this country that they actually realize that, yeah, the system is definitely rigged against the younger folks and in the older folks' favor. But like I say, like I've said so many times in the past, and you folks who are regular listeners and followers of this of my channels, you've heard me say this many times before. Here's the thing about the human experience, right? We all come into this earth basically naked, right? And completely and wholly reliant on everyone else around us to take care of us because we're so vulnerable, right? When you're an infant, when you're a child, you're extremely vulnerable and completely dependent on the older people, aka parents and others, right? To take care of you until you can, gain some point of independence, usually in your late teens or early 20s kind of thing. Well, here's the crazy thing about how the whole human experience plays out. Once you get to the older, that last portion of your life, things flip entirely. And now you, as the older person, and boomers, if you're listening, pay attention. At some point in time, even though you still might feel vibrant now and in relative good health, at some point in time, and nobody gets to escape this, right? No matter how much money you have or resources at your disposal, you are going to go exactly back. Well, not exactly, but you're going to go back to that state of being wholly dependent on everyone else in your society, except now it's going to be those younger people, right? When you're a kid, when you're a baby, you rely on the older people. When you're an old person and you become frail and not doing so well and your health starts to wane and fade, well, you are going to be relying on the young people to take care of you at that stage in your life right up until you finally pass. And I got to tell you, not hashtag not all, but for the most part, the best people to do that are your children, your grandchildren, and your immediate family. Those in your immediate family are typically going to be the ones who are best placed and most compassionate and willing to do so, right? Because sure, you can hire other people, but they don't have that same kind of commitment, that same kind of love, that same kind of personal relationship, right? So things can definitely change. And we all know how many stories I've read some in the past, and you've probably seen many in the past as well, where complete strangers, they might end up abusing you, right? Maybe being quite neglectful of you, and especially when you're talking about the way the world is functioning today and these systems and how they operate and the kind of you know destructive incentive um, structures that exist, right? Things are basically upside down, folks, and not going to turn out real well for the people. I mean, sure, you're okay now, right? But that's the story as old as man, as old as time itself. Is yeah, things are right okay, like doing fine right up until they're not. And it's at that stage that yeah, once again, you got no rewind, you got no pause, you don't get a reset. That at that point in time when it's hitting you straight in your face and you're confronting it and you can't avoid it, well, at that point in time, that's probably the worst time for you to actually start to think about things and try to unwind or change some of your past habits, behaviors, or things that you've done to those young people, once again, that you're now going to rely on, right? No, you really should start thinking about this stuff now. First and foremost, don't wait till it's too late. And this is just, friendly warning here, folks. Friendly warning for me, right? I'm just telling you, I see this coming like a freight train barreling down the tracks. I see it coming. I've seen it coming for a long time based on the demographic trends and mass immigration and how that's affecting the young people and how it's greatly enhancing some of the older people and those in the corporate world. But once again, I see the writing on the wall. I see how things are going to flip and turn out to be quite detrimental for the people who are currently, not just relying on the system and supporting it, but propping it up with as much angst and support as you possibly could muster, right? Like I say, I know some of you folks are desperate, and especially the most evil and vile among us, or the childless, the ones who don't have offspring to take care of them. They are the ones that are probably the ones that are the most dominant pushers of mass immigration and all this crazy top-down authoritarian collectivism and rampant wealth and income redistribution schemes, right? They're definitely drivers for sure. And we're seeing a lot of reports coming out lately and recently. Who's the largest cohort of these people? A lot of older and, well, younger too, of course, but a lot of older single women. Right now, the state is their surrogate child, their surrogate husband, their surrogate this, that, and this. But even the state eventually is going to run out of other people's money to spend on you. Or the system will eventually have to do a complete reset. And you don't want that to happen at the particular time and junction in your life when you're at your most vulnerable. Once again, this is something that people really need to take into consideration and think. Whoops. Just want to mute that. I just want to check and see actually how well it's doing over there. Actually, I should make sure I've got this bookmarked as well so that I can reference again at some point in time in the future. Once again, thanks for all you folks who have joined the stream so far. Really appreciate it. I hope you're having a great weekend. I'll just close that up there now and let people once again, if you got anyone that you're familiar with that typically listens to my stuff, and maybe just let them know, yeah, Bennett's not on Rumble. So if you're looking for him on Rumble today, now he done fucked up and he's not over there. But you can find him on X on YouTube, and it will be uploaded subsequent to the ending of the live stream. I will make sure to put it up on Rumble for those folks who just vehemently disagrees with even using sources such as YouTube or X for that matter, right? Rumble is kind of that intermediary, that middle ground, that place where you can go and support me over on Rumble and not have to worry about supporting some of these alternative behemoths that have been kind of messing with us quite a lot lately. Rumble's a good place for to use as an alternative source for watching videos such as mine. So anyways, I'm just going to check it. I see there's a couple comments there already. I'm just going to check them out real quick. Might as well throw on the old spectacles, right? Okay. So we got Lazzy. What's up, Lazzy? So that was going through the last Trudeau. And I don't think it's going to be much different for us. Yeah. Well, Justin Trudeau and his daddy. Well, I mean, that's the thing. We can blame the Trudeaus, and the Trudeaus, whoa, for sure. Plenty of blame to go around for the Trudeaus. But once again, I just got to point this out. Your Trudeaus of the world, or hey, if you're anti-conservative, right? Your Harpers or your Poilievre, right? Or your Jagmeet Singhs, or I don't know, whoever the fuck else was I don't even pay much attention to the socialist types, the full-on socialist NDP tapes, right? Who was the last one that was before him? But anyways, either way, any of these establishment parties, yeah, sure, there's lots of blame for them and their policies, but why do you think their policies get implemented? Because they're supported by a lot of Canadians, right? That's the sad reality, folks, and especially under Canada's first past the post system, where you don't need a majority. You don't need like democracy in terms of 50% plus one. Not that I'm an advocate or supporter of mob rule or democracy, right? As you folks know, but I got to tell you, in Canada, you don't even need a majority. You just need a plurality. You just need, once again, under the first past the post system, you just have to have the largest amount of support, even if it's actually representative of a minority of Canadians, which it is, right? The people who support the Trudeau Liberals, or even if you're talking about the Conservatives or the NDP, the Trudeau Liberals who are in power right now, right, being propped up by the NDP, but that happens even with a minority government. So that happens as a consequence, not just of the Alternative Party supporting them up, aka the NDP, but of that, 30% of actual voters. And if you take that and extrapolate that number out in terms of how many people don't even bother to vote, what are we down to? Like 20%, roughly 20%. So yeah, in and around that figure, right? That's a rough estimate. Around 20% of the country have the power based on government, right? And government edicts and the way governments work, right? Because government is force, right? So they have that 20% has the power of government, the full force and might of the government, as in force, to, make society conform to their wishes or their edicts. That's a sad reality, which is why I'm not a big fan of democracy by any stretch, right? But this is the reality, is the Trudeau Liberals or the current establishment, they don't get to stay in power just because they choose to, right? No, they're not. So far, not yet. We're not a full-on 100% dictatorship. No, they're actually supported by a substantial portion of, in particular, a lot of boomers too, right? That's what we're seeing even when you're looking at polls. Who supports the current establishment? But those who have lived long enough to greatly benefit from the establishment, right? So of course, that only makes sense. But that's who it is, folks. It's a lot of people, and they don't want, the status quo disrupted in any way, because a lot of these boomers are just now, or for the last few years, or up to a decade now, but there's still many more years for the whole boomer cohort to start retiring. And even once they're all retired, people live a lot longer today than they did in the past. They've got maybe decades of their lives still left. So they want to keep the gravy train rolling and humming on down the tracks for as far or as long as they're going to be in this world. And they'll convince themselves that, hey, I had to pay into this system, or else if you're a government worker, I had to put up with all that shit working for the government, because you know how fucking toxic of an environment those places can be. But I did that for 4 decades of my life, God damn it, or 5 decades. And I'm going to want to get, even though you've already lived an extremely entitled lifestyle in comparison and contrast to the rest of us, especially those in the private sector, right, who've been forced to prop you folks up and to pay for all your entitlements. But yeah, they want to keep this gravy train going. They don't want it to stop. They're still living that utopia on earth, right? They've been voting for decade after decade after decade, and using us as the means to make that a reality. And like I say, they're far from done, folks. But anyways, I got a couple more comments I'm going to read, and then I'm going to get actually right into these. I got a couple articles, really, really good articles that are kind of covering this stuff, and I'll get to them. Just give me a sec here. Hey, Justin Turtle, what's up? Hey, ya hosers. Hey, ya hosers. Nice to see you in the chat. Appreciate it, man. Hope you're having a fine day. Prodigal Mom. Canada is merely a dominion of UK authoritarian dictatorship, caste system ruled by so-called elites. Just getting more obvious to us longer in the tooth. Well, I mean, that's the thing. There's lots of people in the Anglosphere, but if you think about it, look all over the world, even in the absence of the Anglosphere or outside the Anglosphere, people in all kinds of countries in Europe, right, that don't speak English, or even in South America and places, Argentina, Venezuela. So it's not just, I mean, I get it, and I'm not saying that you're completely and 100% wrong. There's obviously examples where I'm sure I would completely agree with you on some of that. But what you got to remember, folks, is it's just understanding human psychology and understand the fact that people, no matter how much pretense of benevolence or altruism they put forth, in reality, at the end of the day, people are in it for themselves, right? That rational self-interest is going to dominate no matter how much political rhetoric or nonsense people espouse, right? This is just the reality. And libertarians understand this so thoroughly and so well. because we understand, like I say, libertarians understand not just philosophy and first principles, but if you've done your work and you're an astute observer of how things play out, and you understand, you put things together in terms of the psychological aspect, right, and how our human brains work, how we're incentivized. Like I say, everything has been set up for the current type of system that we live in. But once again, because I can acknowledge this stuff, because this kind of information is available, hell, I'm putting it out today, and I've done it many times in the past. People don't get the excuse, right? You know that old saying, I've shared a lot. Ignorance is, or no, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. So yeah, sure, you can claim ignorance, but in the age of information, well, you're choosing to be ignorant, right? If you're even slightly questioning or concerned of how things are going on, it's not hard to figure out or to learn what's taking place and what are the cultural drivers, what are the political drivers that are creating all these wedge issues. Well, once again, all these things have been explained many times in the past by not just people like myself, but many others as well, and not just libertarians. Jordan Peterson, I think he considers himself a classical liberal. Although now I think he calls himself a conservative, although that's the thing. Like, I don't know why you want to play that binary where it's only conservatives or liberals and there's no gray area in between, or pretending that libertarians don't exist. Although I have seen Jordan Peterson, a couple of people he's talked to, engaged in the past, he does actually acknowledge and understand that there are libertarians out there. So I don't know. But like I say, he does seem to want to play this whole binary thing. And a lot of them do. A lot of them do want to just constantly refer to things as an us versus them, red versus blue, liberal versus conservatives. But in reality, partially you can look at it that way, but there's so many other areas that you can look at things to actually understand things much better than just that, right? Just the red versus blue thing. Because I think that greatly degrades the conversation and people's ability to think critically about what's taking place. Anyways, I'm going to get to this first article. Just give me one sec here, folks. There we go. Actually, no, here we go. There we go. Do this one first. So this one is from generationsqueezed.ca, and they put out some pretty decent content from time to time. And I got to tell you, I appreciate some of the stuff they do put forth. And this article in particular, which was also published in the Globe and Mail, is kind of helpful in terms of helping to understand and expand on the kind of things I've been just kind of alluding to. So without further ado, let's get to it. So Globe and Mail, our kids think we're rigging the system against them. This was posted by Paul Kershaw, July 18th, 2024. So this was originally published in the Globe and Mail, okay? Previous generations are rigging the system for their benefit and making it harder for my generation. That's what 54% of Canadians aged 18 to 29 believe, according to new Ledger polling. Most also think politicians are more interested in promoting and protecting the interest of older generations than people my age. And think about that, folks. That's 54%. Now, I get it. Polls, right? You can take them with definitely take polling with a grain of salt. But this is at least something that shows you that it's something that's on young people's mind. And at least the ones who are sampled, it's on a majority of young people's minds. Readers of my column will know I agree. Ongoing over extraction of shared resources from the environment to wealth from the housing system and of young people's tax dollars to pay for boomers' retirement all rig the system against millennials and Gen Z. Of course, this is another thing, folks, and I pointed this out many times in the past, is, there is a generation in between boomers, millennials, and Gen Zs, right? Yeah. Us, Gen Xers. And it's very strange, although I've explained why a lot of people, or a certain amount of people, or a subset of our society seem to don't even acknowledge that Generation X exists. And for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with that, my explanation of that is, so if you're one of those boomers that went into the professional type of career, right, and didn't have kids until you were in your 30s or 40s, let's say, then if you're a boomer and you have your kids that late in your life, by the time you have your kids, they're in the age range where they are part of the millennial generation. So boomers, a lot of them, the older ones, or the ones, like I say, that went into professions or government, right? Stuff like that. They are the ones that had millennial aged kids. Whereas my parents, the ones that went into the private sector and had their kids in the normal timeline, in other words, in their teens, early 20s, their kids were born and come of age in a time that is considered Gen X, right? So that was what, 65 to 80, in and around there, or you could stretch it out to 84 if you want to do like the 20-year timeline. Depends on if you want to go the 16-year timeline for a demographic shift or 20 years. But basically 65 to 84, somewhere in around that range, that would typically represent Gen Xers. But once again, that's that difference. And if you think about the kind of people who are reporters or politicians, part of the establishment, or those in education, right, or part of these establishment institutions, these are those professionals or people that put off having their kids much later in life, or maybe didn't even have kids. And to them, the people that they know that had kids had millennial age kids, right? So to them, the next generation is millennials. They don't even know. And if you just hang around with like-minded people or people of your same cohort or demographic, then you don't even know the difference, right? As far as you're concerned, the next generation is the millennials. So that they're just a little explanation for those of you who maybe haven't heard me talk about this before. That is why Gen X is often overlooked and completely ignored. And that's another thing, actually, for you folks. If you're really into learning more about demographics and intergenerational theft and how that's all has played out and the conflict between the generations, or explanations return the demographics and the generations, just type in intergenerational theft or boomers, Gen X, millennials, all just those keywords into my, what I got, 1,400, almost 1,400 videos and live streams. You just type that into my channel, whether you're on YouTube, Rumble, or Odyssey. You can go to Odyssey. There's a bunch of them there too. And what's the other one I got? I did some in the past of Facebook, but no, just if you look to Rumble, YouTube, and Odyssey for the most part, and you put in those keywords or those tags, you'll find, I don't know, probably a dozen or so of my past videos and live streams, digging more into this stuff. But I'm just going to continue on to reading this article for now. I recently hosted a town hall in Vancouver with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Why would you do something so foolish? I wouldn't even want to be near that fucking guy. Anyways, let me read on. I recently hosted a town hall in Vancouver with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to discuss these generational tensions with an invited group of 50 students and representatives of local community groups. Those who would like to hear the conversation should check out the latest episode of the Generation Squeeze Hard Truths podcast. I left feeling hopeful there is opportunity to restore intergenerational solidarity, but only if Gen X and boomers send clear signals to all political parties that we want to be better ancestors, because leaders can only get so far ahead of the electorate before it becomes politically untenable, as the carbon pricing debate now reveals. So actually, I guess so. I just got to say, at least right here, right? So Gen X, there it is, but only if Gen X and boomers, right? So at least this person is acknowledging. So kudos to him, right? For at least acknowledging that we Gen Xers do exist. So yeah, I guess, right? At least there's that, right? The Prime Minister's popularity wanes among contemporary voters, even as history books will write well about some parts of his intergenerational track record. How is that? How is that? What is his track record where he's done anything good for the younger people, right? First of all, government is force, so it doesn't do good for anyone. Or, I mean, well, it depends. That's a subjective determination, right? But it's a zero-sum game, basically. But what has he done? What? Stop criminalizing the fact that young people or even older people, stop criminalizing people consuming a plant, right? Really? The weed thing? Weed legalization? Is that what he's done that you consider so good? Because what else? What else? Maybe I'll read on and find out. So let me just, take a minute here and maybe find out what the hell he's talking about. His government's enrichment of the Canadian child benefit reduced child poverty by about a third. So, first of all, you do understand that if you stop fucking taxing these young people or old people and just let them keep their own goddamn money, you don't have to redistribute any of it back to them. Pretending that government's stealing your wallet and giving you like $100 out of it back is somehow benevolent or reducing child poverty suggests to me that this person has no understanding of what the fuck, how government even works, how it functions, or, you know, the very real and undeniable and undisputable fact that taxation is absolute theft, right? Wealth or income redistribution is highly immoral and unethical. But anyways, I'll continue on. But come on. I'm already choking up, or not choking up, but choking on these words, even trying to read such nonsense. But anyways, I'll continue on. He allocated funding to build a $10 a day child care system after a half century of previous governments ignored a similar recommendation from the 1970 Royal Commission on the Status of Women. Okay, first of all, these two things are about, what is it again? The child tax credit or Canada Child Benefit and $10 daycare. Well, what about the millions of Canadians? Have you not noticed that the demographic trends is Canadians aren't even having replacement rates in terms of the amount of kids they're having? So what fucking good is it to have child tax credit or $10 daycare when a large, sizable portion of our young people aren't even capable, or they're capable, but aren't able to have kids because of their terrible economic situation and potential situation to even have a home or a place to raise these children? Did you ever consider thinking of that? Like, holy shit, I'm already getting frustrated. But this is what I mean. Even people that are trying to pretend to think outside the box in some way, shape, or form, even here, you're being massively manipulated, and the way things are playing out completely distorted because this person is just coming up with some weird shit in their mind. What stuff you've been told by the political ruling class or their media mouthpieces? Because that's all this sounds like. It just sounds like you've been, reading talking points from political parties or their statistics that they like to, banter about without thinking about anything outside of that, without thinking about the big picture whatsoever. Shame on you. Shame on you indeed. Do better. Okay, where was I at here? Okay, yeah, okay, here, 10 after half century, okay. He implemented the price on pollution after decades of governments discounted evidence that we betray our children when we don't pay for our carbon emissions. They will pay clearly down the road for messes we were unwilling to clean up now. So, carbon tax? Are you fucking serious? Making everyone's life more expensive needlessly because you see emissions going down? Nope. Once again, this is not going to play out anything even remotely close to what the ruling class thinks, these utopians, these dystopians, really, to be honest with you. But yes, a tax on everything you consume, even the air you fucking breathe, right? A carbon tax, right? Holy shit. That's a benefit for young people, is it? Wow. Like I say, what in the hell is wrong with this person? Wow. Woefully and inadequately informed, I would definitely say, but thankfully I am here to clarify things, not just for him, but for anyone who's listening to this live stream. But pollution pricing may ultimately invite the Prime Minister's electoral defeat. Polls reveal many Canadians are hesitant to show intergenerational solidarity on this issue. After Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre vowed to focus the next election on the carbon tax, and Mr. Trudeau exempted home heating oil owing to pressure in Atlantic provinces. Such political rhetoric, right? Such fucking... You are failing your readers so miserably. Thankfully, I'm covering your article, and I'm going to clean the mess up that you left here. Housing is another intergenerational problem for Mr. Trudeau. Since he expects younger Canadians to endure higher housing costs to protect many older people's home equity, an intergenerationally just housing plan would expect those of us receiving protection to offer some compensation in return. So you basically here, it's suggested that you at least somewhat know that the system is genuinely rigged against younger people. You're basically admitting it here. And yet what? you're still going to offer up apologist rhetoric for it? See, to me, this is something that someone would an article someone would write to try to tamp down the young people's concerns and give them some false sense of, oh, don't worry, we got your back. We're going to fix things for you. When? When they're all fucking goddamn old and retired themselves? Because you got to remember, a lot of these young people, have gone through not just their early days, their youth, but now, especially millennials are now into their fucking 40s, for Christ's sakes. So their entire adult lives have been living under the thumb of predominantly the boomers who've been supporting big government using forced wealth and income redistribution and these housing and these Ponzi schemes and mass immigration to keep housing costs more expensive and their wages greatly suppressed. That's what's been happening. And to think that the young people are like, that you're what? Oh, you're going to fix things? Like I say, when? For millennials, I mean, what? Gen Zers? Gen Zers, there's still a decade or two left, maybe, where you got some small window for them. But millennials, come the fuck on. Like I say, when you consider most of them are already now in their 40s and 30s and stuff, or even very, very late 20s, that is the time of their life when they're supposed to be setting up roots and doing all these things. Like I say, helping them when they're now at the boomers' age. That's way, way, way too late as far as I'm concerned. Jeez. Wow. Public opinion is not yet on side. Mr. Trudeau. Okay, let me just get through this article. I got a better one after this, right? Anyways, Mr. Trudeau suggested during the town hall, an older generation of folks, they say, I remember I had to scrimp and save for years before we could set a down payment on a home. And that, of course, is true. But the Prime Minister insisted there is something fundamentally different facing young people today because good jobs no longer guarantee a path to home ownership. Getting seniors to understand that there's something different, I think, is a bit of a challenge that we are still working on. Well, once again, this guy claims to be the leader. He's supposedly the Prime Minister of Canada, or pretends to be, right? Well, he is, as far as all these Canadians are. So why aren't you leading? If this guy is claiming to be a leader, and apparently, a lot of Canadians think that he is a leader, although fucking please, right? Who's he leading? Nothing. Nobody. He's a ruler. He's a petty dictator. He's a fucking a petty tyrant, right? He's a silver spoon-fed, entitled, privileged, elitist piece of shit's what he is. But a leader? No, definitely not. But if he wanted to pretend or act like a leader, because he does apparently have some acting experience, right? Then if you wanted to act like a leader, well, he could lead by example and, use that political power that he's got and that he's had at his disposal since 2015 to completely disrupt not just the housing market, but put a kibosh and an end to mass immigration that has been contributing to the massive suppression of wages and destroying of people's, and the amount of money that the government, let's say it right, not printing, but artificially creating money to buy government bonds, the central bank and their stimulus programs, or the stimulus of the COVID-19, or at least that was the excuse they used of what was it, up to $700 billion that created all this inflation that's not just causing massive and rampless homelessness, but even those who with homes are living as second-class citizens in their own country. He could have very easily, because of the political power that he has, easily, long ago, actually implemented policies that would have greatly, greatly contributed to massively reducing, if not almost eliminating, some of these hardships that have been placed and placed squarely on the backs of younger Canadians. But he has not done so, not even till now. What's he holding off till the last election? He wants to get one more go around at being the ruler of Canada. So he's holding off to I know everyone hates me, but I'm going to throw them a couple bones at the very last minute so I can maintain my power. If that was the case, and if you're foolish or naive enough to believe him or to support him under that kind of pretense or under that guise or that false sense of benevolence, well, once again, that just shows me how naive and gullible you truly are, young or old. But the Prime Minister, okay. Further work is also required to get older Canadians to acknowledge that administrations didn't play adequately decades ago to raise the revenue needed to cover the cost of boomers' healthy retirements. As a result, there's less room in contemporary budgets to invest in young people. New spending on old age security in budget 2024 will increase 15 times faster than new spending on housing and 10 times faster than new investments in childcare. OAS increases also drive unpaid government bills. Well, listen, even all this pretense of spending, even though, and I mean, you're admitting there that government implements all these policies. So the fact all these policies are still in existence tells me that Mr. Trudeau is talking to both sides of the mouth at the same time. And I don't even fucking call him Mr. Trudeau. I don't know why I just did that now. He's a piece of shit, right? But true dope, right? Could have fixed that long ago, right? Especially when he had majority government, could ram anything through. Well, even with Jagmeet Singh, right? If they gave a fuck, they would have rammed some legislation through that it would have put an end or a kibosh on some of these policies that are greatly benefiting the older generations at the expense of the younger ones. But to pretend, this is another thing. Let me just point this out. Why the fuck do you think young people should need government to help them anyways? Here's an idea. How about you treat them like the fucking adults that they are and just give them back their money, stop stealing from them, stop plundering their future resources, or their future productivity, or their future incomes, or their future wealth. Leave them the fuck alone so that they can build up their own nest eggs and have some goddamn ambition, self-esteem, and the proper resolve to do so, right? That one would require, and that kind of independence that makes you so much superior than being a dependent on the state, right? Why in the fuck would anyone think that being reliant or a dependent of the state is anywhere even remotely near something where young people should be or anyone should be? Like, such adolescent thinking. These people they walk around in full-grown adult bodies. As you can see, this Dr. Paul Kershaw, he looks like an adult, but his brain still functions like a child, like an adolescent. And he wants to continue that, to pay that forward to multiple successive generations. I say no. I say, strive for independence, strive for sovereignty, strive to be able to do what you have to do in life without being propped up or supported by not just your parents, but by authoritarian mommy or daddy, aka big government. That is what's going to truly benefit you, not just economically, but socially and psychologically as well. And it'll pay dividends your whole life. Let me tell you, I speak from experience, and so do my two adult sons, who would agree with me wholeheartedly on the insanity of how this sounds, right? I'm so glad that I raised my sons not to ever think that you got to wait for government handouts or you better clamor for government handouts. That's the only way you're going to get by. Oh, you need my government. Like, really, though? Holy shit. I'm almost going to throw up in my mouth just even thinking about this kind of rhetoric. But let me continue on. Let me finish this thing. Disrupting the generational tensions that flow from budget decisions made decades ago is very difficult, he implied. It's a shame to see that the largest housing investment in Canada's history is the size of a mole by comparison with the scale of new money earmarked for today's retirees. So Ottawa needs to rebalance things at least a little bit, he concluded. and yet they haven't. Pretending that you know this shit, and yet you've never done any of it, except here, you can smoke weed. You can buy your government weed. What the fuck? What the? His openness to rebalancing fiscal policy to promote fairness for every generation is important, but I can understand why he may hesitate if older voters don't signal enough popular support. He's already paying a big enough political cost for carbon pricing that his opinion on other intergenerational issues may not matter after the next election. So older folks, let's get on with creating the requisite political cover, incentivizing all parties to end the over-extraction from our kids and grandchildren. Otherwise, most millennials and Gen Zs will be right to judge we've rigged the system against them. Well, yes, you and the rest have, right? Yes, you have. But his openness to and talk about, the voters. Did you notice anything? The one thing that is completely absent from this, that I've had to fill that gap throughout the whole article, is an understanding regarding ethics, the ethics of it all. He's talking about politics. He's talking about, legality and policy and none of this shit without talking about anything in terms of how the ethical implications of this, of intergenerational enslavement and theft, right? Not one bit of anything on that. But so Dr. Paul Kenshaw is founder, lead researcher, and executive chair of Generation Squeeze. He is a policy professor in the UBC School of Population and Public Health and director of the UBC Master of Public Health. So he's a status quo figure himself. So, of course, what do you expect? Should have known all along, right? If I had just read that part at the bottom first and foremost, that would have basically summarized and explained the whole pretense or the premise of the article. Like I say, what a fucking shame that these are the people, who have access to the bully pulpit and the loudest voices. Not people like myself who will explain things properly, but no, it's these hacks, right? Anyways, let me just check out some of the comments there, folks. Yeah, I'm getting a little wound up, man. This shit really annoys the crap out of me. It really does. JP loves to play victim. Isn't that true? Isn't that true? And once again, I'm not hating on Jordan Peterson. Not hating on him at all, right? I've learned some very valuable things from Jordan Peterson. I've also seen some things about him or things he said that truly infuriated me, and the whole victim thing. And yes. But once again, I got to say, he's not the worst out there. He's far, far, far from the worst out there. Matter of fact, there's a lot of times where it's like, if I had to do it on balance, I'd say there's more positive things that he's brought to the equation, to the table, than negative. So there's that, right? So there's that. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but like I say, he's even helped me out quite a bit in terms of bringing religion, psychology, politics, trying to bring all that together and try to understand things, like I say, at the macro level. I will say he has helped me out tremendously in that regard. Good point, Dave. The system is rigged against everyone. And in a way, you're kind of right. In the long run, at least, right? In the long run, for sure, the system is rigged against everyone else because, if the younger people, can't afford to take care of the older people and the whole system eventually collapses because of all this rampant wealth and income redistribution and the economic enslavement of the younger people, then, that's going to be a negative consequence and outcome for everybody in society, right? And this mass immigration, the pretense that all cultures are equal and all this, that's going to have massive negative ramifications and consequences for everyone as well. But make no mistake about it, Dave, there are some people that genuinely, at least in the interim, at least for a time, are massively benefiting themselves at everyone else's expense. And that is a truism all on its own, right? But thanks for joining the stream, David Dismantle. Really appreciate it. And David, how you doing, my friend? Thank you for joining the stream as well. Always nice to see David in the chat. Both of you, all of you folks, always great to see you in the chat. Thanks for you folks who do join my live streams. I really appreciate it. That's what actually keeps me going, folks. I know the numbers are small, right? There's a smaller cohort of us than there used to be in the past, but God damn it, you folks are some of the best ones that best kind of people I've ever wanted to be around, and I'm very, very grateful and appreciative that you folks continue to show up to watch my live streams and my rambles and rants from time to time. Very much appreciative of that. Whenever government says investing, what they really mean is inflating in currency. So true, Dave. So true. You said a mouthful right there, and I wholeheartedly agree. It's pretty aggravating seeing citizens that put work into this country struggle while illegal newcomers get everything for free and spend like lottery winners in the store while we price check, etc. I know, and like I've seen that myself, and this is the thing, folks. I'm seeing a lot of people, and even myself, is starting to get, my outlook, even when I look at immigrants these days, most of my life, and I'll tell you, this is an absolute truism. Ask anyone that's ever known with me. I could be around anybody, and it's still that way for the most part. I could be around anybody of any background, of any color, right? Any race, their sex, whatever the hell you want to identify, gender. And I like to treat people as individuals and not have prejudice, right? Not have any form of prejudice whatsoever. I like to just give people a chance, and you get to show me what you're all about. If you prove to be an idiot or an asshole or a bitch, well, I'll see that, through your actions or your rhetoric or whatever. But I usually like to give people initially you get, I'll think nothing but good of you until you prove me otherwise. But I got to tell you, just like David's pointing out nowadays, fuck, even I'm being affected. Even I now, when I see a lot of these, newcomers, these immigrants or these asylum seekers, and it's not just, based on superficialities or how they look. No, no, no. I'm talking how they talk, how they act. I mean, to me, it's like they seem, some of them, not hashtag not all, but some of them seem to be very fucking entitled in their mindset. Very, very entitled and seemingly completely unwilling to try to at least fit in, with the pretense of what, you know, our countries are supposed to be all about. Because that's the thing. The history of our countries are supposed to be all about supporting freedom of speech, individual liberty, all that stuff, right? But no, we're seeing a lot of them, and they're not just out there, working in retail and stuff, but a lot of them are filling up these government jobs and now becoming petty tyrants themselves against old stock Canadians and greatly, tremendously benefiting themselves at our expense, especially in particular those of us who don't look to be benefactors of this massive Ponzi scheme or the multitude of wealth and income redistributive schemes that governments have set up. I refrain from them. But these folks that are coming to this country are like, a substantial portion of them are literally pigs at the trough. I guess they're learning from the kind of people that bring them here, right? Starts at the leadership on down, and we're seeing the replication of the entitlement, the mindset of the ruling establishment is bleeding on down to the people they're bringing in this country. And not just this country, but a lot of countries in the West these days. And I'm sure you folks understand exactly what I mean there. UK right now is definitely one of them, and the US is another. But yeah, I'm with you, David. It is very aggravating, especially to see so many younger people just struggling hard. And I work with a young man, and he's a great young man, wise beyond his age, very wise beyond his age. He's only in his mid-20s, and he's paying a ridiculous amount just to live in I think it's a 2-bedroom apartment in Fredericton, and basically, between him and his I believe it's just his girlfriend at this point in time, but they basically just get enough to get by. But yeah, not even thinking at this point of having any kids because they see how difficult things are, and they worry about these things. Although I tell them that yes, things may be difficult, but I try to suggest, having kids can be difficult no matter what era or what situation you're placed in. I'm one of the people that try to say, but maybe try to rise to the occasion. I try to give them a little bit more of a positive outlook on things, but I understand where he's coming from. I completely understand where he's coming from. Even my oldest son, I'm very happy to know that my oldest son is back living in New Brunswick with, in fairly close proximity to me now, about an hour away or so. But even my youngest son, he has a house, but that I won't go into explain how that happened, but that was just kind of a fluke thing that he got a house real close to me and he didn't get ripped off. Right. That was a one in a gazillion kind of a thing. My oldest son, though, who's actually even, a few years older than my youngest son, still in a position, and him and his girlfriend both make good damn money, and they can't afford to buy a house. Houses have been priced out of their reach as well. And we're not talking about living in big centers, urban centers like Toronto or Vancouver or Montreal places, right? No, we're talking in like places like Fredericton, New Brunswick. So yeah, it's permeating through all areas of our countries and making life tremendously difficult for, once again, the younger people, the old stock type Canadians, and even some of the immigrants who are first, second generation, but have been here for quite a while. Whereas the new ones, right? This new cohort, the ones who have been, especially under the Trudeau Liberals who have been coming here and ramped up, right? Yeah, have serious entitled mindsets. And I find it quite disgusting and vile, to be honest with you. But yeah, I'm with you there, David. I'm completely with you. Government produces nothing with which to invest. Everything is either stolen from others or money is created out of thin air. 100%. Dave, you're on a roll, buddy. Once again, facts, absolute facts, truth. Oh, there we go. Small groups are more genuine. Well, for sure, because a smaller group, everyone has the capacity to hold each other to account in small group type settings, right? That is definitely true. Anyways, let me get back to this article. I'll read some more of the comments a little bit later on here, but I'm just going to get back to this other article, which I think did a superior job in terms of helping to explain things a little bit better here. And of course, the reason why that probably is because it's from the Hub, and it's someone who is not part of the establishment writing for this particular publication. And once again, I'll get a chance to read here. Just take a little sip. Let me make sure it's shared. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're good. So disrespectful. Oh, sorry. Let me just, Eric Lombardi. Baby boomers have won the generational war. Was it worth young Canadians' future? This is created on April 16th, 2024. So a little bit older of an article, but it's something that I finally got around to covering once again. And it played into the other article, which was a much more recent one. And so it's kind of going with the theme, right? Which is why I wanted to cover this one as well. Disrespectful, unappreciative, alienating, unfair, inflammatory, sensationalistic, ageist. If you're a baby boomer, these are likely some of the thoughts you might have when being accused of waging war on young Canadians. We know the late 1980s were difficult. We know you've navigated personal hardship and may still be. We know you worked hard to give your children a better future. You've contributed enormously to building Canada as one of the most socially free countries on earth. It's such a joke, right? The housing crisis, the impacts of climate change, enormous public and private debt, and an evident decline in the state capacity, and an increasingly stagnant and competitive economy. We know you didn't vote for this, and these problems are not only your fault. Surely young people could afford housing if they just quit the lattes and avocado toast and traded social media for hard work. Their anger must be overblown. Okay, yeah. You see where that's going now? That's a little sarcasm right there. The result of the latest World Happiness Report examined by the Hub this week should be a wake-up call. Ranking 6th globally in 2015, Canada has now slid down the happiness rankings to 15th in 2023. That doesn't sound too bad, right? However, digging a bit further into the details uncovers a shocking generational divide, the largest of all countries surveyed. Canadians over 60 ranked as the 8th happiest globally, but Canadians under 30, 58th. Young Canadians are not okay, and why would they be? To come of age in Canada over recent decades means having borne witness to a steady erosion of your future prospects, with society placing anxiety-inducing burdens that the dominant generation has voted to make your problem. Exactly. And baby boomers, that cohort, that big baby boomer bulge, have that power of numbers. And in a democracy, and this is exactly right, they've used that power of numbers to completely dominate, successive generations, even more so for us Gen Xers, because we Gen Xers are actually a much smaller cohort than not just the boomers, but even the millennials. So we have been outvoted basically our entire lives. That too is a fact. The ugly reality is that younger Canadians are living in the aftermath of a transformation that has eroded the social contract between generations. We have seen nearly every system and institution become a pyramid scheme with the young at the bottom, right? Life delayed, future denied. Housing starkly illustrates the generational divide in Canada, symbolizing the pinnacle of broader systemic issues that have forced young Canadians to unwillingly delay adult and domestic life. Take education, for instance. Canadian boomers have overseen an era of practically mandatory credential inflation, requiring young people to jump through circus hoops and pursue years of additional education and apprenticeship to have just the hope of securing middle-class jobs that were once possible with only a chance and a bit of on-the-job training. So true. So true. Absolutely true. That's the thing. The boomers come of age at like this Goldilocks time, right? It was just not because of anything that they did in particular, because once again, When they come of age, not like it was anything that they did. It was past generations that created the era, the atmosphere, and the situation that the boomers got to take massive and great advantage of. And not that I would begrudge them, but hey, how about paying that forward? Or how about you stop, benefiting everyone's else's expense once you realize that that's what's taking place, right? I'm not begrudgingly against, older generations, getting theirs, right? But if it comes at other people's expense, right, or it's a zero-sum game, or it's part of Ponzi schemes, then yes, you really need to stop that. You really need to stop supporting this rampant wealth and income redistribution and these Ponzi or pyramid schemes that are tremendously benefiting you, but once again, at the expense of multiple successive generations coming up underneath of you. After graduating, young workers face the daunting task of repaying an average of $28,000 in student debt with salaries that have fallen nearly 10% when adjusted for inflation since 2010, lagging behind living costs for years. Meanwhile, the dream of home ownership has become a distant reality. In Ontario, for example, saving for a down payment now demands 22 years of savings on an average income, a stark increase from the mere 6 years required 2 decades ago. And that's just 2 decades ago. When these boomers were buying their houses, right, in what, the 70s and 80s, I mean, they were buying their houses, or actually some of them would have even been doing it in the 60s, right? The younger or the older boomers, but they were buying their houses at ridiculously low prices. We're talking in the tens of thousands, folks, right? 10, 20, maybe 30, 40, 50, 60,000 for a nice big home, 3-bedroom home with the whole thing, with your yard, your big backyard, some property, all that stuff, your white picket fence, all that stuff. And the vehicles, how cheap they were at the time. I mean, a lot of them, you could even have just one person working to pay for it all, right? To pay for it all. Now try doing that today. Yeah, massive, massive difference and almost impossible for everyone. The combined impact of prolonged education, stagnant entry-level wages, and soaring housing costs has significantly delayed financial and familial stability for young Canadians in comparison to their parents, often beyond prime reproductive years. This delay has directly contributed to Canada's fertility rate, the average number of children born to a woman in her lifetime, plunging from 1.7 in 2008 to 1.33 in 2022. So not even, you need 2.1. You have to have 2.1, you have to average 2, right? So but above 2, so 2.1, you have to have 2 kids just to maintain replacement rate. But if you wanted to grow in any way, you need actually excess of that, right? But yeah, down to 1.33. So just, averaging out just over 1 kid, not even close to that 2 that you would need just for replacement rate. That, like I said, that's going to have profound implications for us all at some point in time. And the older people will come to learn this. Now, they're trying to paint over this shit with mass immigration, but that's actually only going to make matters worse, right? And I've described how that actually plays out in a multitude of videos. Just type in mass immigration and you'll hear lots of things that I've had to say as it pertains to that. But let me move on here. With the sharp falls, unsurprisingly, in British Columbia and Ontario, young Canadian women report having 0.5 fewer children than they like. Devastatingly, many young Canadians have given up entirely on the possibility of family life, unable to align financial realities with their desires, even with daycare for supposedly $10 a day. In response to the prospect of demographic decline, Canadian policymakers have leaned heavily on increased immigration to sustain population growth. This approach, beneficial in moderation, but having dramatically departed from it in recent years, has added to this list of challenges for young Canadians. It has driven up housing costs in a supply-scarce environment, abetted by infamous boomer NIMBYism, increased competition for entry-level jobs, contributed to a rising national unemployment burden, and fostered an economic environment that has empowered many employers to forego investing in their workers. According to the National Bank of Canada, in immigration, this country has engineered a population trap. And all these things are absolutely true facts that more and more of the older Canadians really need to start thinking about. And you younger folks, like I say, you got to do your best to get completely away from supporting anyone who represents the establishment or the status quo, which is why libertarians, like, I just got to tell you, folks, because we libertarians are typically function outside the establishment, the status quo, and don't look to use violence or rampant income redistribution or force of any kind as a means to an end. We are the best people to get aligned with and show solidarity and support with if you want to have any chance in the future. And that's just the truth. I'm sorry, I just got to tell you that, folks. And it has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with actual principles, actual ethics, actual understanding humans and incentive structures and how they work. That's something a lot of us libertarians, hashtag not all, but we understand intrinsically. A stagnant economy with mountains of debt. Meanwhile, the competitiveness of the Canadian economy has been steadily eroded over decades through a rise in the power of industry associations and lobbying groups mandated to sway politics and regulatory landscapes. The signs of mounting regulatory capture can be seen in the growth of bureaucratic cottage industries that have buried real economic activity in process and paperwork. This environment has fortified existing monopolies and stifled competition, disproportionately benefiting an older generation ensconced in secure, protected sectors. Consequently, young Canadians are left facing a bleak economic landscape, deprived of meaningful employment opportunities and the dynamism needed for robust economic growth, when their lives could benefit from it most. Coupled with the now needed diversion of their disposable income and capital into housing rather than productive ventures, Canada has become trapped in a zero-sum economic state that fails its young. Once again, see how this article is much, much better at properly articulating some of the serious problems and doing it unapologetically, right? And without playing politics with it. So once again, kudos to the author of this particular article. Good job so far. The next generation is shouldering a daunting fiscal legacy and grappling with a public gross debt that has soared to over 110% of GDP, which puts Canada among the top third of OECD nations. This burden is magnified by household debt levels that have rocketed from below 100% of GDP in 95 to over 175% in 2023, driven predominantly by Canadians aged 35 to 44, who faced a staggering debt-to-income ratio that has increased over 100% since 1999, reaching 250% in 2023. So, obviously the younger Canadians have to assume much, much, much higher levels of debt, even to try to even keep their head above water, or in their attempt to stay on par or keep up with the much older Boomer Joneses, right? And they're failing miserably at even attempting to do that because, once again, the deck is stacked completely against them. This debt explosion, driven by wealth transfers from aspirational young homeowners to older house-rich Canadians, along with reckless government expenditure, is set to burden future generations with a lifetime of unreasonable interest payments and higher taxes. Annually, over $80 billion is drained just to cover the interest on government debt, an amount that mirrors the total expenditure on nationwide K-12 public education and more than $2,000 for each and every Canadian taxpayer. Once again, folks, this article will be linked in the description of this live stream. And once again, share not just this video, this live stream, but this article with others that need to learn this kind of stuff, right? That's the beautiful thing. The good thing about living in the age of information is, once again, ignorance truly is a choice. This rise in unproductive debt has been driven by the boomers' free spending expert consensus that advocated for leveraging public debt for productivity enhancing capital investments. This has given wasteful politicians permissions to erode Canada's fiscal capacity by squandering it on current spending while failing to advance long-term economic prospects. burdened and obligated. This loss of fiscal capacity matters because the next generation will inherit expensive obligations without much room to maneuver. Due to aging demographics, spending on retirement benefits is projected to surge by 40% to $96.3 billion in 2028 from $69 billion in 2023. That's just 5 years, folks. This means nearly half of all new federal spending projected in last year's budget from 2023 to 2028 will be allocated to elderly benefits. Wow. So the rampant wealth and income redistribution will continue for the foreseeable future. Take that to mind and heart, younger Canadians. You really need to start stepping up and doing things to get out from underneath the thumbs of these older folks who are greatly benefiting at your expense and the expense of not just you, but even those who are unborn. Because even you folks will never be able to pay off all the debts and deficits that the older generations have incurred and thrust upon you. Now, that's going to continue on for much, much longer than even you will be able to sustain, which is the absolute shame of this rampant intergenerational theft. Nobody should have the capacity, and in the absence of government, nobody would have the capacity to economically enslave entire generations of people. Adding to our obligations, Canada faces an infrastructure deficit that could be as high as $1 trillion, underscoring the urgent need for state institutions that prioritize efficiency and value. Yet instead, we witness a disheartening spectacle of waste, inefficiency, and soft corruption in public procurement that few dare to admit. A glaring example is Toronto's Ontario Line subway, costing over $1 billion per kilometer, nearly 5 times the expense of similar projects in cities like Paris, France. Finally, the specter of climate change, unequivocally acknowledged by the scientific community since the 1980s, represented an urgent and ignored call to action. The repercussions for the next generation are far-reaching, making the fledgling carbon tax earning the ire of Canadians now. What's this? Okay, never mind. Why did that pop up? Anyways, let me read that again there, folks. The repercussions for the next generation are far-reaching, making the fledgling carbon tax earning the ire of Canadians now looks like nickels and dimes. Exorbitant costs for mitigation, spiraling insurance premiums, food inflation driven by supply shocks, and a permanent reduction in global economic growth awaits us in the future. In a recent Globe and Mail op-ed, "Stop blaming boomers and other retirees for the housing shortage," senior business columnist Rita Tritcher chalks up the downsizing debate to peak millennial entitlement. Right? They forget who raised them. That's the thing. Calling the young people entitled. Well, who the fuck raised them to be entitled? And where would they learn that kind of behavior or habits from? Right? Really, though? And I mean, yeah, sure, some of them may be, but there's a lot of them who are far from entitled. The sad part is I've known quite a few of them and know quite a few of them that basically have almost given up in life and accepted the fact that they're basically just going to be second-class citizens in their country for the rest of their lives. That is a reality that many young Canadians face and seemingly are willing to accept. There's nothing entitled about that. Sad. In a recent Globe and Mail op-ed, "Stop blaming boomers and other retirees for the housing shortage," senior business columnist. Oh, sorry, I read that already. I'll wait now. But in the entitlement Olympics, young Canadians aren't even close to taking home the gold or even the bronze. Ain't that the truth? The real story has nothing to do with downsizing. It's about how boomers have set policy traps that have systematically kneecapped future generations' prospects. In their wake, boomers have now left behind a country of systems littered with economic landmines and lower living standards. To suggest millennials' expectations are anywhere near the entitlement boomers have exercised is to ignore a battlefield shaped by the older generation's self-interest. So well said. Political leaders are finally beginning to acknowledge the deep-seated anger and despair that have rightfully festered among the youngers Let me start that again, folks. Political leaders are finally beginning to acknowledge the deep-seated anger and despair that have rightfully festered among the young under their watch. Prompted by sour polls or perhaps a belated wave of concern, Justin Trudeau's 2024 federal budget will be focused on the young Canadians they've largely neglected since taking office 9 years ago. They've spent the pre-budget period announcing a substantial, if imperfect, housing plan, yet its success hangs precariously on the willingness of provincial leaders like Ontario's Doug Ford, who has shown gatekeeper-like resistance to demands for critical reforms. Beyond the realm of housing, Canada continues to face a broader crisis. A lack of leadership ready to address the erosion of our institutions and a decline in state capacity, despite an ever-bloated public sector. Yeah, I just did a video. Look to my last live stream, actually, Big State, Little People. If you want to learn more about the bloated public sector, very shocking numbers contained in that. And thanks to True North for putting out a great article, great publication with all those facts and stats contained within it. Thank you very much. And I, like I said, just did a recent live stream covering that. So definitely check that out. The upcoming federal budget, likely laden with unproductive deficit spending and increased taxes, will fall short of the systemic reforms needed. True change seems poised to rest on the shoulders of a new generation of leaders at municipal, provincial, and federal levels who are prepared to reconstruct a Canada that future generations will be proud to inherit. And that's the thing, folks. At some point in time, when the old establishment is finally moved on, right, to different pastures, you got to be overly concerned. You need to be really concerned with who's going to fill that gap, that void. And yes, I definitely want to see those with a live, let live mentality and more of a libertarian type mindset to fill that gap, right? And start shrinking the size and scope of government so that, at the bare minimum, we can get to at least a minarchist type night watchman state. I don't want no state. I don't need no rulers whatsoever. But if we could even start gradually turn this big ship around, start at least gradually heading back towards where government is so minimized that it doesn't have the power to affect any of our lives in such profound manners, or to rig or set up these zero-sum games or systems or Ponzi schemes that, once again, benefit some at the expense of everyone else. That is vitally important. And when you're talking about not just Ontario's Doug Ford, Trudeau himself, no doubt, and many of people that he surrounds him with or typically aligns with, and I would acknowledge all the premiers and many in the bureaucratic state and the public sector, the entitled middle class, right? Because that's basically all that represents the middle class anymore is the public sector. The private sector doesn't really have a middle class much anymore, right? That's been hollowed out to almost non-existence. But the entitled, those who do represent the upper echelons of the middle class, are typically those in the public sector. And yet, you think any of those folks, and not just the bureaucrats and the politicians, but once again, a lot of people who just function as whatever their jobs are in the public sector, do you think any of them are willing to vote to see their proverbial gold mine, their golden egg, aka their home, devalued to the point of where they should be, where their actual valuation should be, which would be at least to the point where younger people could start getting a leg up and get into the housing market? No, they're not going to allow that to happen, folks, because they squandered all of their income. A lot of them are, like I say, now on their pensions, and now they need to keep that proverbial gold mine sustained so that they can sell it to a younger person and go off and retire in some southern clime or in Florida, or continue their entitled lifestyle here in Canada at everyone else's expense for the foreseeable future and decades to come. So anyways, I believe that's the that's, you've reached the next story. So that was it for that article. But like I say, I'll have this linked in the description of the video below, or the stream below. And I think, once again, this here, look at the contrast between that article and the one I read prior, right? This one was much more astute and offered a much, much more nuanced way of thinking about this intergenerational, this demographic trend that's been taking place for a long time. And eventually, at some point in time, is going to come to a head, right? These are the kind of things that we all need to be talking about. And we should all be actually getting together and talking about this stuff and discussing it and how we can best fix things. And I got to tell you, a little biased here, but yeah, it is predominantly people like myself or we libertarians, the critically minded and those who actually put ethics front and center when you're talking about these policies is we are the ones that should be, leading the charge because we're in the best position to do it in a manner that is genuinely beneficial to all and not just for the short term or the medium term, but for the long run, even more so in the long run. Anyways, let me just check and see how the old chats are doing. I had a couple more little things. I might just read up on them, but I'm not going to keep this live stream going too long. Let me just read a couple more comments here. All the new Nigerians in the city I live, and there has been a lot, seem to drive either a Mercedes, Audi, or Cadillac, which is right. I mean, just think about that. I mean, I hate to be resentful of others. I mean, that's the thing. Without knowing them individually, I don't know how they earn their wealth. But that's the thing. A lot of these people, even if they are independently wealthy coming from other places, do they also, a lot of them still get a lot of the props and perks that come from forced wealth and income redistribution. And even if they can afford, right, to buy these homes, right, because they're independent, wealthy or whatever, once again, they got to, has anybody explained to them that, yeah, you're functioning in a Ponzi scheme? Even though you might not be contributed to yourself knowingly or willingly, but people really need to be letting these people know that things might look okay on the surface, but there's a lot of shit bubbling up under that surface. And eventually, like I say, things are going to blow up, and everyone needs to start thinking about that and how they want things to play out in the future. Person I know went to urgent care for finger cut at work, 5 stitches, and waited 7 hours as the waiting room was full of old East Indians. Public health crisis, courtesy of illness reporting. Well, that's the problem with having a public healthcare system, right? That everyone likes to tout or claim to be free. Well, if you think something's free, you're going to use it as much as humanly possible, or you're going to be incentivized to, right? Oh, I don't got to pay for it. It incentivizes the worst habits and behavior among us because people are like, oh, I'm not paying for it. They're not seeing the cost. Whereas if you had to actually pay, like if you seen the cost up front, you'd probably think, oh, fuck, you mean I'm not going over a sneeze or a sniffle or a, whatever, a cut finger, all those 7 stitches, it might have been genuinely bad enough. But I mean, like I say, a lot of these things, a lot of people would be, refraining from overusing the healthcare system if they actually had to pay, if they had any actual skin in the game. Actually, they do have skin in the game, but they're forced to pay it on the back end, or those who are part and part of the system never pay for it. That's the thing. There's so much imbalance in the way things are and who the burdens are squarely laid upon, whose shoulders the burdens are laid upon, right? That's that divide, right? That's the us versus them, the haves versus the have-nots, right? Those who gain the system and those who are forced to prop up the system. And people like myself that try to keep themselves in good health and rarely, if ever go to use the healthcare system, once again, other people are benefiting at my expense. Now, I guess I could say, well, I might as well start using the healthcare system more, but I don't have that within me. That's the thing. Certain people, we hold ourselves to a higher standard and to actual principles. Now, yes, it may seem that it comes as a detriment, and it does in certain aspects, but because of the way I am and the kind of, the way I've taught my children and the kind of people I typically surround myself with in my own little inner circle, in my own group, like I say, some of the best people you'll ever meet. And I'm so grateful to have them in my lives. And I can't help but acknowledge that that's because, I hold myself and them to a fairly high standard, and they do the same for me. But once again, that's not happening. That's not taking place in so many other areas, in so many other households, in so many other communities. So once again, it's crazy how it works out, but the incentive structure is, the way it's set up is, we're going to suffer for doing the right thing, while the people who continually do the wrong things are going to benefit at our expense. And that's something that's got to subside. That's got to come to an end at some point in time. Anyways, I see you folks are talking back and forth. Anyway, I really appreciate you folks. Let me just see what do we got headlined up here. Yeah, actually, I'm just going to, actually, I won't even bring this one on the screen, but this is from BNN Bloomberg Economics headline: Population growth masked Canada's recession like economic backdrop. This, according to the Royal Bank of Canada, by this report by Daniel Johnson, July 19th, 2024. So yeah, and that is a fact. This population growth, it truly is. It's like, oh, our GDP is growing, but underneath of that is the very real fact that actually GDP per capita, so productivity per person, is dropping off a cliff. But because GDP is growing, because we're bringing in millions of people, right? It seems like there's actual growth, but it literally is hiding or masking the stagnation and the decline of actual genuine economic activity and economic prosperity that is the genuine reality in this country. And you know it, I know it. Millions of other Canadians who aren't part and parcel of the ruling establishment or the public sector, they know it. But that's the great divide, the great difference, folks, is we actually feel the full brunt of the economic reality because we have to live and function within it. Whereas if you're part and parcel of the government in any way, or these corporations who once again are benefiting from big government, well, that's that glaring divide. They're making out like bandits. But once again, it's all coming at our expense. So what's another one I had here? And this one, as if you're not frustrated or infuriated enough, is a headline out of CBC Ottawa. Quick purchase of housing for asylum seekers takes neighbors off guard. Nunnery off St. Joseph Boulevard in Ottawa would house 150 single adults. So, that's the thing. Nobody's buying, like, you very rarely see anyone worrying about, when you see people who are homeless, like the old stock Canadians, bare minimum what they do, the effort they put in for that. And not even saying that you should, taxpayers should be forced, to bail anyone out, right? Personal autonomy, personal responsibility, families, community, right? Charities, volunteer networks. There's all kinds of ways that you can help people out in much, much better ways that actually would be much more profound and not just help them out for the interim, but teaching them, not just giving them a fish, but teaching them how to fish, right? That would be a much more prudent way of doing things. So I'm not advocating for it for anyone, old stock Canadians or the asylum seekers or some of these new immigrants. But the fact that, a tremendous amount of housing is going to people who are crossing our borders illegal, while once again, our younger kids, existing Canadians, or the younger kids of existing Canadians who are trying their best just to get their foot into housing or rental properties, but are being massively squeezed out of them and have to downsize to the point where they're just renting a bed or sharing a bed. I even seen an article where someone had, an ad to just share a queen size bed. I mean, think of how bad things are when you're not even renting a room, you're just sharing a bed. First of all, that's a little fucking creepy to start with, but yeah, also pretty bad in terms of how people have to get by in life, considering we live in what's supposed to be a wealthy first world country, right? So there's that as well. Sickening. And there's many other stories that kind of align with that stuff that would infuriate even more so. But hey, rather than tying this live stream up on a negative note, and there is definitely lots of negativity, that we really need to deal with. You can't ignore it. You can't pretend or wish it away. It is a reality. It does have to be acknowledged and dealt with in some way, some form or fashion. But I do, as I typically like to do, try to end on a positive note, or at least give you something to feel a little bit better than so far what the kind of things I've read or brought to this live stream. Once again, not denying the terrible things, but once again, first and foremost, kind of along the lines of like someone like Jordan Peterson say in terms of cleaning up your room, I cannot stress the importance, because I know how well it's worked for me. I know how well it's worked for not just some of you folks in the chat, but many others that I've conversed with in the past or interacted with, is do whatever you can. Start today. If you haven't started already, start today in building the bonds with the kind of people that have that same live, let live mentality, that actual understanding of ethics, and are willing to help you out when you need so, but on a reciprocal basis where it's like we help each other kind of deal, without without, this pretense of using government as our means to an end. Like I say, if we can lead by example, and like I say, that example has to start at, first of all, from you, and then in your household, with your children, with your grandchildren, with your parents, with your community, right? With maybe your employers. The more we can do to help better not just our lives, but the lives of those around us, the more we can shift things to the point where the culture will not just be more aligned with libertarian values, but wholeheartedly willing to accept them and put big government in its place where it rightfully belongs. Oh, I can't wait for that day. And it will come, folks. I don't know how long it'll be. But if humans are going to evolve it anyway in a positive manner, government, hopefully at some point in time, just like slavery, will become just a distant memory of times in the past where it's like, I can't believe we did those things. I can't believe we thought we needed rulers. But like I say, in the interim, let's at least, turn this big state of ship around and get it headed to the direction. And how we do that is each and every individual do our own actions and our deeds and say what needs to be said, do what needs to be done to help ourselves and others in our community or others in our life to get it going in that general direction. And once we do, and once people start to see for themselves, and you can alleviate all those concerns, but what will we do without the state? What will we do without big government, without authoritarian mommy or daddy, right? Once they see, it's like all my fears and concerns were massively heightened needlessly. And I see how beneficial, just like a lot of people in Argentina are learning today, is once you realize that actually, no, in spite of the lies, the rhetoric, and the bullshit propaganda espoused by those who want to maintain the ruling establishment or the status quo, I see now how much of a benefit, how great it is to diminish the capacity and the might of the state, which in turn and directly makes me bigger, right? Same with my title of my last stream, Big State, Little People. But you flip that upside down, make people big and the state small. Well, that's where liberty, that's where prosperity, that's where genuine happiness, sovereignty, and a fulfilling life actually originates, starts, and continues on, and will flourish, I might add. So let's do what we can, like I say, every single one of us, and reach out to as many people as you know to get them on board to doing the same thing. Because once again, yes, we're all just one person. We are individuals. But there are a lot of individuals and more individuals growing by the day who are finally saying, I've had enough. I'm fed up, and I'm going to do what I have to do, what needs to be done to turn this big state of ship around. And like I say, I'm right there with you, pushing with all my might to get it headed in that general direction. Back towards prosperity and liberty, back to where it's a true benefit for us all. And it's not a zero-sum game. So thanks to you folks who did join the live stream. I really appreciate that. We'll see you in the next one. And once again, all these articles will be linked in the live stream. And I'll make sure to upload this to Rumble. And I apologize for not having it properly set up beforehand. I'll try not to make that mistake again in the next one. The Canadian Libertarian. Oh, have yourself a great rest of your day and the great rest of the weekend. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.